The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Today's episode is From Survival to Sovereignty.
Welcome to Created in the Image of God. I'm your host, Wade Franson, and I'm here with Lela Tuhtan, who hails from the San Francisco Bay Area. And Lela and I actually met last year, and we talked about doing a show together. Some things came in between, but now here we are, and I'm finally able to introduce her, and I couldn't be more excited. Lela is a coach, consultant, and writer who empowers people to rewrite their life story. And she had her own experiences with this in childhood, which she'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. But she shifted from the classroom to teaching in personalized coaching settings. And she works with high-performance individuals, helping them transform and overcome what they have been towards what they will become. And the key thing is for these high-impact individuals to break free from limiting beliefs. So welcome to the studio, Lela.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very excited. As you know, and as my audience knows, I have my own set of, you might say, baggage that I've had to carry forward, that I've had to work with. So, my own path working through that has been, long and winding. I'm really excited to introduce somebody who is a professional who can help people do that. And, even if people don't engage with you directly as a result of this, they're going to learn along the way. And as we always like to do, we like to know sort of the backstory of how you got into this field and who you were, down deep. So share with us a little bit about your family background, your parents, the circumstances that you grew up in, and then that transformative story that kind of shaped your life.
Yes, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I am now living. And my parents are both from California originally. Their families are, immigrant European families coming here. They're both second generation American, and they both are extremely hardworking people. So my dad was an electrician. He's now retired. My mom was a teacher. And so that was that hard work and that, sort of work ethic was deeply instilled in me since I was quite little. And also the idea of security being externalized, like you would get the job and the job would be what you did for your entire life. And you, as long as you stayed at that same job, you would get in the union, you would essentially get the American dream. I think my parents really are emblematic of that dream. And they raised me to prioritize security, right? They raised me to, like, when they talked about what kind of work I was to do in the world, they were like, pick something that you are passionate about, but also choose something that is going to provide safety, that is going to have a long, stable trajectory. And I share that because I became a teacher and I loved the work I did I did that for almost 10 years. But it was right before COVID. It was around 2018, 2019 that I started to question this path. And I started to get really interested in coaching. I did the coactive training at that time, and it really woke me up to this whole new world of possibility. I started seeing clients one-on-one, as well as coaching other educators in the world of academia. And I started seeing that, like, oh, there's a whole other way to have a career. There's a whole other way to work. And I actually feel like this is really deeply aligned. So I essentially realized I was the black sheep in my family and that I had a different path in front of me. My parents were super supportive when I started exploring all of this. And now, you know, I have a robust career and it's 100% aligned for me. But the trajectory in me getting here was not easy. Like I was basically, you know, the whole thing, my entire business is really all about supporting people in unlearning stories they've inherited and breaking through narratives that are quite limiting for them. And this was one for me, right? That like, could I be an entrepreneur? Could I run my own business? Could I do work that is a little ambiguous? Like, it's not so easy to explain what I do, right? And I've proven through my experience that, yes, I can do that. So I think that I'm a walking, talking example of unlearning narratives that you've inherited.
Wow, you've said so much already in this, and I have a couple of questions that I want to backtrack and then start unpacking some of this. The first one is, where exactly are your parents from? I'm also curious about the name Tuhtan, and I don't know if that's a married name or inherited, but the background there.
Yeah, that's my dad's last name, and it is Slovenian. So it's former Yugoslavia, now broken up into Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia. But yes, that's where my family comes from. They all come from Slovenia, and I've been there several times. I have cousins there. Like, it is not far removed from me. Yeah.
So I was there way, way back. This is how I look old, and I'm even older than I look. But when it was still under Tito's regime, way back when, and you had to get like a special permit to go through the country, I was like traveling, and I studied a little bit into the Serbski, Hrvatski language, from that area. But anyway, so that's cool. I wanted to know exactly where. And so many immigrants that came to this country, they had that work ethic. And I'm glad you touched on that. But I want to ask, because you said something really fascinating to me, which is this whole externalizing security. And I made a note. We'll come back to that. But first, tell us about the bike.
Yes.
When you were 10 and how that played into all this.
Yeah, that was, we have these moments in our lives, these sort of earthquake-like moments, right? Where everything gets shaken up. And, one big one for me was when I was 10 years old, I was riding my bicycle with a friend and it was dusk. And I was turning a corner and a car hit me head on. They were running the stop sign. And I flipped multiple times over the car. I had a fractured skull, a severe concussion. I broke my leg. I broke a rib. I was, in fifth grade, I missed most of fifth grade because of this. I was in the hospital for over a week, and then I had to be at home doing rehab for a few months. And I was on the front page of the local newspaper. I remember vividly coming to sixth grade after I had healed most of my injuries, and a bunch of kids had cut out the front page of the newspaper, and like they were making fun of me when I came to sixth grade. From, moving from fifth grade to sixth grade, I was starting at a new school because it was middle school. And I remember so vividly a few kids showing me the picture of myself, and half my head was shaved. I had stitches all across my forehead. I had 2 black eyes, and they were like, "Oh my God, look at you. Look at how, horrible you look, and look how ugly you look." And I remember feeling like right in that moment, Wade, I had an opportunity because I could feel myself, I could feel my body metabolizing and potentially internalizing what I was hearing. I could feel physically this opportunity to either take it in and assume this as part of my identity, or to take it in and transmute it into something else. And I couldn't explain this at the time because I was only 10. It was just a physical feeling, right? But I could really recognize oh, I can take this and it will become a wound, and I can be really injured by this. And, As they say in Buddhism, this is like the second arrow. The first arrow is the accident. The second one is this, the judging of everybody because I had this accident. And I made a choice. I made a choice to actually transmute it instead. So I remember saying to some of these kids, like, yep, and I'm alive. Isn't that amazing? I can't believe I survived this. Like, I was able to like twist the story into something triumphant. And it took practice. Like, it was not like this was some, feat that I was consistent with. Like, I remember some kids saying some things to me, and I was really hurt. And it took me weeks to really see, like, oh, I actually have to turn that around again, and then other times I was able to do it in the moment. And then, as my life has evolved, even years later, I remember like, oh, actually, I could have done it there too. Or, wow, I did actually assume part of this is my identity and I thought I hadn't, right? So it's a complex process, but what I learned from that experience is that when you go through something traumatic, there's this enormous opportunity to take whatever has happened and that transmutation I'm talking about, right? To take it and actually compost it like you would composting, garbage that you put aside to put in your garden. And when you compost it and you make something fertile from that, something beautiful can grow, right? That's what I learned from that experience.
Wow. So I'm getting this image of kind of a Zen master that learns how to like defend and ward off, with, Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man movie or whatever, where they're shaping reality. There's another piece of that. So that's a traumatic event. And it's kind of like I'm going to say kind of a one-time thing, although it has repercussions for life. But then there's the gradual story that you referred to earlier. And I love when you talked about externalizing security. And I got this image of how, we have self-reliance to a degree. And this is created in the image of God. I believe that much of the power to do all this comes from a reliance on something greater than oneself, outside oneself. But then one is given the capacity within oneself to do something about it, right? Richard Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, he mapped out how some of the survivors of one of the worst things that have ever happened to any people on earth was the Holocaust, and that some of those who survived because they derived meaning through this. They didn't, howl at the moon. They derived meaning from their suffering, and that gave them the ability to get through it and to survive. So there's a drawing on external power, but then there's something internal that happens to us. But then you couched this in your family background and your father's career and your mother's career about you get security from some outside organization that you rely on, a company and a career choice. And this has translated over time into every person graduating from high school thinking that no matter how much the universities keep ratcheting up the prices, you have to go pay for a degree. I'm going to pivot here a little bit. My daughter's going to college, and they made her watch this movie about student loans. And there was this guy on there who went and became an orthodontic surgeon, and he kept getting suckered into more and more schooling and loans. By the time he was close to being done, he learned he had to do an internship and all this. So he was into it for $600,000 already. And by the time he finished, he was $1 million in debt. Wow. And he broke down crying, explaining that he had to pay $6,000 some every month in interest alone on this $1 million. And now he was an orthopedic surgeon making lots of money, but he would still never pay off this debt that he incurred. And this is that sort of externalizing security that has metastasized throughout society. You follow me?
Absolutely.
And yet we do want, and I'm off on a tangent, but I think this is important. So we need to rely on ourselves, that divine power, but then we do tap into security from some of these things. We also want society overall to provide security. So at some point we've gotten in today's world to the point where many of our young people are growing up virtually incapacitated
Mm-hmm.
because they need society to take care of them. We've got a program where we've got raised bed gardens and we get kids' hands into the dirt. It's called Soul Seeds through the Royal Falcon Foundation, so that they begin to learn you can grow your own food.
Mm-hmm.
In World War II, the Victory Gardens, 60+% of Americans grew some or all of their own food. Today, it's less than 1%. I think it might even be less than 0.1%. So long-winded unpacking of your story here, but this thing about externalizing security and the life story that we grow up with and those limiting beliefs, I'm kind of unpacking it in a different way and letting the idea live that, yeah, to go from having a secure career with an outside company to become an entrepreneur, it can be terrifying and incredibly challenging to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Wade, you're bringing up a really important point that we actually, the self-reliance piece and the resilience we actually have, the resiliency, right, is something I think we've overlooked. We've been conditioned to overlook for decades, really. I mean, even centuries. I mean, I think we could go all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, but like what you're talking about with how this is all metastasized over time, we are very much separated from the soil and separated from our sovereignty. And I think that's a cultural norm that has become so, it's gotten out of hand. It's like actually become quite unhealthy, right? And there's elements to this that we need to name, which is, I think you're also saying this, like community is essential to that. Like to be sovereign does not mean to go be independent of everybody else, right? But we can't, we have right now people relying on institutions, organizations, corporations, really. It's like we're looking at these different modes of power that are what we are taught to rely on. And what I have learned through my like black sheep, sort of unfolding in my life is that you actually have an enormous amount of power when you learn how to garden yourself, when you start to run your own business, and you're still sourcing from the community around you. And you also need to be extremely generous, right? And reciprocate. Like that once you do that, once you start getting in the habit of doing that, all of a sudden the energetics of that shift everything. And I can give you concrete examples. Like, I mean, to just use the gardening example, we have our own garden. We have we have all of our different planter beds outside, and we have neighbors who also have gardens, and we're always trading vegetables. We're always like checking out each other's gardens and helping each other out. Somebody goes out of town, we're watering for each other. Like we understand that because each of us have our own backyard gardens, we know, oh, this person's this whole ecosystem they're creating, this whole little habitat needs support from us if this person is gone, right? And they're going to contribute by giving us whatever they have, because there's going to be a bounty when everything is, fruiting and everything's blooming and all the things. So there's one example. And then I can give you an example regarding business. When I was a teacher, I was relying on the institution wherever I was teaching at the time. And my husband jokes about this because one of the dinners that we had at the end of the year, during that dinner, the people who were retiring got celebrated, and they would get a plaque and a watch, right? And they were contributing like, oftentimes 30, 40 years of service, right? And my husband saw this and he's like, Lela, I like really respect the people who are doing this, but like, is this what you want? Like, do you want to be here for 30 years and get a watch at the end? And that's not to say that that's not honorable, but do you feel like you are committed to being at this institution? Because that's the exchange, right? And that really woke me up to see that, like, oh, if I work for myself, is there a different reality? Is there a different possibility? So when I started working for myself, I realized that I can create, I can contribute to my community. My community contributes to me. I can create a whole different reality of reciprocation. So, for instance, like being on your podcast, now you are in my network and I'm in your network. Like, I will think of you when you tell me about all of the businesses that you're running and all the things that you're doing. If I meet someone, I'm going to refer them to you, right? Like, this is how we can build a whole different paradigm if we're thinking like that. So becoming my own, being a business owner and being my own boss has been so educational for me.
Amen. And it's interesting that we went this whole gardening route. I got to acknowledge my wife is really the one who does most of the work in that. I'm helpful. That I actually started the foundation and this Soul Seeds program. But yeah, we're reaching out. We're working with local credit unions now to do this, and in youth groups and whatnot. But the one thing that I want to highlight from what you said is that the way I look at it, the individual, the community, and the institutions have to work together, and they have to understand their roles, their limits, their boundaries. But it really depends on that strong individual. And then it depends on strong families that then build that community, right? And the resilience that's built into those relationships provides what's needed when something bad happens, when something breaks down, when things don't go the way you would expect at an individual level or whatever. And I'm just, it's funny almost that we're talking about gardening and raised bed gardens and that and this. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break where we'll showcase a video about your work and what you do. When we come back, we'll quickly find out, how did you get into that? What was the segue like? And then what is the work that you do, and how do you do it in helping others overcome these limiting beliefs and begin to grow and expand in the way that you're describing here. We'll be right back with more of Lela Tuhtan on Created in the Image of God.
In a world where religions often talk past each other, what if we just sat down and listened? Facets of One is a simple devotional, bringing together scripture from the world's faiths, centered on one truth: God is one. From the Bible to the Quran, from Krishna to Christ, each voice speaks in turn, without argument, without division. You don't have to agree on everything. Just be willing to pray, to listen, and to come together. If you're longing for something deeper than noise and division, this is a different kind of conversation. Facets of One. Many voices, one God. Will you start a circle?
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm here with Lela Tuhtan. We were just talking about how our beliefs limit us, and also how we have a responsibility to take that individual responsibility for ourselves, build communities, and also work with the institutions, which, if we have an over-reliance on them, create society that limits our self-reliance. So this is a discovery process that, we talked about your bike accident. We talked about the beliefs of your family and externalizing security. Tell us now about the specific journey that you took to get to the point where you could leave your career in teaching and launch an entrepreneurial career to help others, and how that worked out.
Yes. Well, it was very much everything we're talking about with, the institutions, community, and relying on myself, as well as relying on God, source, the universe, because all of those things played into my trajectory. It was a huge leap of faith. Building my business. It was around, as I said, 2018, 2019, I started getting training in coaching, and I still loved teaching, but I was playing with the idea of doing both. Then 2020 came, and as you know, we had another traumatic event that was global during that time. And I had just decided to start my own business, and as I said, I was teaching still in 2018, 2019 while I was coaching. So 2020 was when I was like, okay, I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to just fully just dive into coaching. And that was at the beginning of the year. Well, only a few months in, all of a sudden, everything's turned inside out and upside down because of COVID. And that was when I had to just continue with this leap of faith. Like every part of me was saying, like, go, every like physical part of me, Wade, was saying, go back into teaching, play it safe. All of these schools are desperate for educators right now because this was when, COVID was rampant. Like they needed to have teachers needed to be online with kids. And so I was getting like tons of phone calls for opportunities. And yet my inner truth that was beyond all of the fear was like, no, stay with this, stay with this, stay with this. And I started to call in my mentors. I found the people to help me, other coaches who were leaders in their fields to mentor me, to support me, to guide me. The institutional piece, coactive played a huge role. I got trained in eco-psychology. Like I did, the institutions absolutely play a role when you're like, I want to be educated in something. I want to get trained. Like, I definitely saw the value in that as well. So my family, honestly, my family was like, we don't really understand what you're doing, but we support you. So we're along for the ride, but we don't quite get it. And I just trusted that path and started to build. And what happened actually quite quickly was I built a 6-figure business within a year. And I think the reason that happened was multifold. I think I did call on help. I was not afraid to do that. And I reciprocated. I was as generous as I possibly could be. I was offering complimentary sessions to people. I was, I also have a lot of experience in editing and writing because I was an English teacher. So I was offering those skills to people when they needed help. I was paying people and I wasn't afraid to invest in myself. All of that helped me build something. I think the other piece was that there was a stroke of luck, ironically, in it being COVID, because a lot of people were losing their jobs and a lot of people were having identity crises because of this, right? And so actually being somebody's coach at this like monumental inflection point that was happening across the world was highly valuable. And I realized quite quickly that coaching did have a place in the world and that I had a role in this work. So that was my path. I realized very quickly within a year or two that I work at the archetype of the person I work with was revealed to me. I work with very high functioning people. I work with people who are oftentimes, they look successful on the outside, but they have some major internal blocks that are happening for them. And the process I move them through in unlearning stories and more fully integrating and becoming who they are in a whole way, and then being able to step into that and express that in the world. When I practiced that again and again and again with these different people, and it was like, it didn't matter if they were 25 or 65, if they were in medicine or academia or, design. I mean, none of that mattered. It just mattered that they were willing and that they understood that their story was not their identity.
I'm sure that you have to be careful about what you reveal. But is there any particular example that you would bring out that really helped you see the power of what you're doing, whereby an individual overcame and transformed by understanding their own story differently, and in that Zen way reshaping the story that governed them, taking charge of that?
Yeah, I can give you an example for sure. One is a client who was a lawyer, and her whole family had a very similar narrative to mine, so I could relate to her personally, right? Security comes from the job, and in her family, becoming a lawyer or a doctor was the North Star. Like, get the quote unquote secure job that will pay you well and that is, well respected in our culture, in our society. And so she became a lawyer, even though when I traced her experience, her trajectory in becoming a lawyer with her, there were so many red flags. There were so many moments that in her deep inner knowing, she knew that this was misaligned, that she didn't feel good doing it, that, her body was literally getting, like, she would get sick, she would get hives, she would have like really bad migraines. Like, there were just all these signs. So she becomes a lawyer. All these physical issues continue. She ignores them. She's like working at this, very, very stressful job. And she was an entertainment lawyer. And when we started working together, she was at the point where she's going to ask for a medical leave because she was so unwell. And we unpacked all of that together, right? Why did she become a lawyer? Who taught her that that was what she needed to do? What did she really want to do? And beneath it, Wade, she always knew she wanted to write. She knew that she felt really inclined toward art, and she'd always loved making art. She loved healing work. So she, not in the traditional sense of like, our Western medical system and becoming a doctor, but she was really interested in acupuncture. She was really interested in massage. Like, she was, in therapy and potentially becoming a psychotherapist. So we started to break everything down around what she had learned and what she had internalized as true. And when we cleared all of that out and made space, all of this stuff from childhood started to emerge, these memories of what she was so interested in doing, or how she naturally would tend to a friend who was crying, or the beautiful art she would make, or whatever it was. And we worked together for a couple years. And throughout that time, she was able to let go of that career completely. And she's now training to become a therapist. And she also is in an improv workshop where she's writing and creating and playing. And there's just so much healing and so much generative energy in her now. So that's an example.
Wow. As you're talking about that, I'm reminded, and I know we had some talks some time ago and I shared certain things. I don't recall right now if this was shared, but at age 28, I was diagnosed with a chronic crippling disease. I was told I would be in a wheelchair at age 40. And I was then, recovered from the immediate acute situation, but there was a gradual decline. Then I was given temporary medical leave. I was working in Europe. I returned to the United States, and there I was offered permanent disability by my global employer. And I turned it down because I said, with God's help, I am going to get well. And I've focused on the fact that that God didn't provide miraculous healing, that instead he over time helped me understand what I needed to do to become well, to really be healed, but not through some supernatural intervention, but to change basically everything about myself, the way I ate, the way I worked out, but more importantly, the way that I thought. And then around the end of that period of time, I started doing this program by Anthony Robbins, 30 Days to Personal Power. And I realized that one of the limiting beliefs that I had was that this idea that if you were somehow well off materially, financially, you would somehow be evil, right? Because rich people are evil, right? They're greedy, right? They're stingy, they're not generous, right? You know what I mean? These were limiting beliefs. And I focused on that part of it. But as you're talking, I realized there were additional layers of my own story. And by the way, this there's no cure for this thing I had. I was told by the doctors in Germany that diagnosed it, hey, we got nothing for you. There's no treatment for this. We'll give you cortisone, and that might ease some of the symptoms to a degree. I'm like, yeah, but it'll actually make me worse over time, won't it? Because I knew enough about what cortisone is and what it does. He says, well, yeah, it won't help, but it'll ease some of your pain along the way. I'm like, no, thank you, right? So, and I read about 100 books and I studied into health and all that, but I didn't really unpack the way that some of those beliefs were playing into this, where, and it's an autoimmune condition where I was literally, my body was attacking itself.
Yeah. That's awful. That sounds.
But I mean, I got through it, but I didn't quite process that piece of sort of the story that I created in the narrative. I mean, I unpacked pieces of it, but there's probably some deeper stuff there. I should probably, book a session with you sometime to go into that. I'm just reinforcing what you're saying based on my own experience and
Yes.
how you describe what this attorney was going through, that this is probably common to a lot more people than we think it is.
Yes. I mean, your story, I think, totally exemplifies it. I'm so sorry that happened. And yet I'm so.
Oh, no, it was great. I needed to go through that. It's part of my journey. Again, to about your biking accident.
Yes.
I was unpacking layers of this onion about how I was a victim, right? And I at the time I could go into this whole thing. Well, my mother smoked and drank when she was pregnant, and then I lived in a house with secondhand smoke, and they thought I had asthma, which I didn't. It was secondhand smoke, but that was back in the day before they really realized that was a thing. And then they gave me penicillin, in these bottles that were like flavored like cherry and banana that they had in the fridge liquid. And I would go in there as a kid and drink this stuff because it tasted good, right? So I just totally, but all these things happened to me as a kid. So I was a victim of all this. You follow me?
Right. Totally.
That was part of the whole story. Today, I realized what a blessing that I had all these problems and challenges, but that with divine help and assistance, I could work my way through them. This isn't to judge anybody else who's stuck and blame them. You're not really a victim. I was a victim of all these things. But so what, right? I couldn't remain a victim.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And I mean, I know you mentioned Tony Robbins' work. Like, I know that he had a similar, trajectory, right? Like the reason that he does the work he does in the world now is because he was a quote unquote victim. His mother was drinking. He was in poverty. Like, it was not an easy childhood for him. And so, yes, I hear what you're saying, Wade, and the path that you went on in, again, transmuting that, right? In seeing like, oh, I really appreciate what you were saying, that you didn't ask for direct intervention from God.
Oh, I did. And I was not happy that I didn't get it because I knew he was capable, and I'd actually experienced some miraculous divine intervention, right? Previously when it was the right time and the thing I needed, but now he's saying no.
Yeah.
It wasn't just my grace is sufficient for you. You're going to suffer like this. No, it's like, you figure it out. It's on you. First, you have to realize that you're sick.
Yes.
Right? That it's me. It's not my mom. I'm the one that's sick.
Right. Right. And I'm hearing that you had to realize you were sick, and you also had to realize that you had agency, which brings us back to the whole point about sovereignty, right? Like you have agency. This isn't, the whole thing with like the interventionist God, right? I think can be misunderstood. It's not, we're not here to not do the work. We're here to do the work, right? Like animals, this is true of all living beings. We are here to work. And that doesn't mean we don't get to also feel love and joy and play. Like there's a balance to all of those things, but there is receiving, and then there is also not like, I'm not sure what the word would be, like laziness, yes, but it's not, I don't know if it's as simple as laziness. There's a whole
mix of things. There's also entitlement.
Yes, exactly. Entitlement's the right word. You nailed it. That's what it is. Like my accident, if I were to say, woe is me, this horrible thing happened, these kids are making fun of me, and now I just want to be healed. I want this to go away, right? That entitlement is a form of resisting reality.
And it's our own sense of fairness and justice.
Yes. And I think that that's where we can get really stuck. We can, and this client I'm telling you about, that happened many times in my work with her, where she would say, no, Lela, I hate this. Like, I just want to make money, and I want this job to be something I can do. Why can't I do this? So what if it's not something I love? Like, I just want to be able to do it and feel safe. And, I'm telling her, your body is breaking down. Like, you actually physically cannot do this job anymore. All signs are pointing to you being on this planet to do something else, right? So that, and and to your point, Wade, I'm not here to judge anyone around this. I am human. We're all human. I do it again and again.
Right.
Like, just because I went through this when I was 10 doesn't mean I don't do it now in my 40s. I do. You know what I mean? Like, it's rinse and repeat, but the process is to come back home to the remembering again and again of our sovereignty, right? Of source and of our connection to something bigger. And when I do that, I go, okay, actually, what's in front of me here? What's possible? What do I need to, what do I have agency around here? What can I change, right? And I see that with all of my clients. Like, another example I can give you is I have a client who is, I mean, he's really going through it. He's getting a divorce. You know, he has 3 kids. His business is completely falling apart. He at one time was a multimillionaire and he's now in debt. And and he's such an exponential person. He's like somebody who can just move mountains. But if he moves mountains from a place of misalignment, that can be really dangerous, right? He's moving mountains from a place of where he's lacking integrity. So the work that we're doing is really helping him slow down and witness and be with the grief that he's experiencing right now. To slow down and go, all right, this is really hard. I can handle this. I don't need to overfunction. I don't need to fix it right away. I don't need to, put a Band-Aid over it. And by doing that, he's actually increasing his capacity for all of the hard things in life and feeling all of that pain. And he also is feeling so much more joy. And the access point, because he's feeling so much more deeply, is he's getting all of these ideas for his next move. He's like, oh, I'm seeing how I can change my business. I'm seeing what I need to say to my ex to make that relationship copacetic, right? So I don't think I could see in him that he couldn't access how much more powerful he could be if he didn't slow down and actually feel the feelings from this, fallout that's happening in his life.
Wow. Well, we're going to go to a quick break. And because we're beginning to run out of time, this is so rich and so deep, I got to also watch the clock. When we come back, we're going to ask the question, where are you growing next? Given everything that you've learned, what's next for you? And also how people can connect with you if they want and engage with what you're putting forth here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Lela Tuhtan on Created in the Image of God.
Meet Dr. Lori Schessler, a licensed clinical Christian counselor, speaker, and author with over 25 years of ministry experience. She's the founder of New Leaf Christian Counseling and holds a doctorate in clinical Christian counseling, bringing both depth and compassion to the work she does. Dr. Lori specializes in temperament therapy, a personalized, biblically grounded approach that helps people understand their emotional design and heal from the inside out. Whether working with children or adults, she helps individuals uncover the root of their trauma, anxiety, or relational struggles, and guides them toward lasting transformation. Her voice is warm, grounded, and deeply insightful, perfect for conversations around faith, mental health, emotional resilience, and identity. As someone who bridges spiritual truth with practical tools for healing, Lori offers meaningful value to listeners seeking clarity, hope, and change. An inspiring and thoughtful presence, Dr. Lori brings the kind of depth that makes every conversation feel personal, purposeful, and full of grace. Contact her through the website newleafchristiancounseling.net.
Welcome back to Creating the Image of God. I'm here with Lela Tuhtan, and we were just diving deep into the core and the heart of her work and how she helps people. I was sharing some things personally that I'm learning. She was sharing some examples, but now we're going to ask, okay, where are you growing next? Given all this and the experience and the success you've had and are having, where are you growing next, and how can people engage with what you're sharing?
Thank you for that question, Wade. I am moving in the direction of working with leaders in the world who are here to really shift things. And what I mean by that is I work with people, as I said, across industries, but I'm increasingly finding that the people who come to me are people who are working in politics, who are people who are working in tech, people who are working in spaces where they're actually like pretty instrumental in moving and shaking, in making change that is going to directly impact an enormous amount of people. And the reason that those leaders, I think, are most attracted to the way that I work is that, again, they are successful on the outside, but internally they know that there's something that needs to shift for them to fully express themselves even more. And
well, and you're in California. I don't get into politics, and I try to stay out of the noise of the news, but there's been this unfolding train wreck with a Californian politician who's just had to resign, and he's
yes,
now admitted that there's something to it, even though he's denying, and he has made mistakes. But this is the stuff inside, right, that derails careers, harms tons of people. You know, they say, you know, absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's not exactly that, but it's the fact that when you have power to make impact, your personal flaws magnify out for your own and people around you in destructive ways. Sorry to derail your train there, but I had to, you know, it just happened the day we're recording, that was announced.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, Wade. And you just nailed it. So, you know, it's not that it's industry specific, but it's power specific. I think you just nailed it. I think the next trajectory, the next chapter for me in my career is working with people who have a lot of power. And that's not because I'm interested in myself having power. Like, that's actually not interesting to me. But what is interesting is supporting people to be in integrity with the work that they do and with the way that they, you know, people to actually take the power they have and translate that into sovereignty, true sovereignty, right? So I'm continuing my one-on-one practice, but I'm really recognizing where I'm most impactful in working with people. I do have ideas for a book. I can speak to that a little bit. It's very, very rough draft, but it'll be called Stories and Systems. And it's about all of the stories we inherit, as well as the systems that we create from those stories.
I love the title, and if you need help there, you know, I'm in the publishing industry. I want to share one thing though, because you've mentioned the word sovereignty a couple of times, and I just love it because going back to the theme of the show, created in the image of God, the book of Genesis, the origin story, you've got this fascinating story. I've unpacked it before. I'll unpack it just very, very briefly. You have this serpent that introduces this doubt that the being who created Adam and Eve has their best interest at heart. And the way that it's spun is, oh, God's not letting you eat of these trees of the garden, first of all. And then it's, no, we can eat of the trees, just not this one. Oh yeah, he doesn't want you to eat that one because God knows when you eat of it, you will become like him, knowing good and evil. As though that's a bad, as though that's something God is withholding from us. The truth is, that was the very gift that God was giving to them. They were created in his image because he wanted them to be like him. He wants us to be God-like. He wants us to have sovereignty, and it's very clear and explicit in the pages of the Bible that all things are put, quote, under our feet. We have sovereignty right up to those lights in heaven. It says he put the greater and lesser lights in heaven to rule the day and rule the night. I have them on my wall behind me to constantly remind me, that sun and moon thing there, right? The point is, right up to the lights in heaven, we have sovereignty. If we submit to the light, we retain our sovereignty. And when we deviate and trend towards darkness, we become enslaved by something or someone or multiple things. And then we create systems that enslave us, right? So I love the title of your book, what is again? Repeat that.
Stories and Systems.
Yeah. And yeah, I would encourage you, you know, in your own time, in your own way, that'll be great to get that done. So, but you have a website and people can get in touch with you today?
I do. My website is lelagrace.co, lelagrace.co, and I'm also on Substack. You can find me on Substack at Lela Grace.
Awesome. So, and I love that you're increasingly working with people who have impact and influence. I just read something today about impact, right? So, any other anecdotes that you want to share as we wrap this up in terms of the work that you've done and what it's, you know, how the feedback you're getting on this topic?
I think the last thing I can share today, Wade, is if you know that there is a story that's taken hold of you, if you're aware, right? If you've woken up to that, because the first step is, are you even awake to it? Right? Oftentimes the stories just consume us. But if you know that there's something that's not quite right, not quite true, and yet it's governing your decisions or your behavior or your lifestyle, your career, your relationships, I highly encourage you to interrogate that and take a risk, do something different, unlearn that story.
Wonderful. And are there materials that people can access through your website or through your Substack that unpack some of these ideas?
Yes. My Substack is all about this. You can check it out. I just wrote a piece on grief recently, and all about being able to just sit with uncomfortable feelings and how that actually completely dissolves stories, right? When we increase our capacity, when we feel something that is difficult, and we sit with it and we build that resiliency. So you can check out that article. I just posted it last month.
So it's lelagrace.co is the website. And how specifically can somebody find you on Substack, which I will be subscribing to after this?
Yes, it's at Lela Grace. Same title.
Perfect. And then that's a final concluding thought, but any last words that you want to leave with the audience? We're going to wrap up, and then there's a sneak peek coming so that everybody here can find out what's coming next week on this show. But any last words for our audience?
We are not our stories, right? And I think I'll stop. We're connected to something so much bigger than that, right? We're all connected. I'll stop there.
Well, and we've got like 2 minutes left. I know you got to run, but so discovering then, is there like a true story, or where does it come? Is it a divine purpose, or is it something from within these people that you're working with and them realizing they're not their story? So then they're actually reshaping their story and creating a new story in a way.
We're always creating new stories, right? And it's always subjective. And I think the key is that you recognize you are the witness, right? That's us being one with God, being one with Source, right? Like we are all, as you said, we're all, my belief is that we are all God. Like we are all, and that's not me saying that we are as powerful as the Almighty. It's just that it's all the Almighty or the Source or the universe or whatever term you like to use is within all of us. And so when you get quiet and you're just in the witness state, right? When you're just the observer, then the narratives all fall away and you just have the feeling. You've experienced love. And
you're engaging directly with reality, with what's real.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the funny irony of it, right? Is that we have these like really strong intellects that create all these stories, but man, our monkey minds can go wild, right? And so old stories can fall away and you have the power to create new ones. But even those new ones, you'll see that eventually they need shedding too. And then another one comes up, right? And I do think that because we are storytellers and meaning makers, it's important for us to have, to harness that power, right? To really recognize that like what you think and what you say very, very deeply impacts your reality. But also, can you divorce yourself from that and just be with what is, right? And not always have the thinking mind create those stories, because that's what separates us.
Amazing. Well, there you have it for today, Lela Tuhtan. And thank you so much for being with us. I will just add my tagline: you are created in the image of God. God loves his creation. Stay tuned for the sneak peek on what's coming next week on Creating the Image of God, 8 a.m. Central Time Sunday morning. And remember, we also have an 8 p.m. Central Time version of the show as well. Lela, thank you so much. I'm going to reach out to you after this, and hopefully we'll get together and continue on this journey.
Sounds great, Wade.
All right. See you all next week.
This week on Created in the Image of God. Tuesday at 8 p.m. U.S. Central Time. Host Wade Franson interviews Dalia Mogahed, scholar, researcher, and one of the leading voices on Muslim communities. She shares her journey from Cairo to the United States and how she came to understand herself as an American Muslim. A conversation on faith, identity, and pluralism in a world often shaped by fear, headlines, and misunderstanding. And then on Sunday at 7 a.m. Central Time, host Wade Franson, Michael Gungor, musician, author, and creative mystic. He reflects on the idea that we may be seeing reality upside down, and what it means to live in tune with something deeper, from creativity and suffering to love, being, and a quiet yes at the center of existence. Join us live this week, Tuesday and Sunday, created in the image of God.